Welcome to the Daily Stoic channel, where we explore profound philosophies about life together. In today's special video, we will delve into the deep reasons why being close to your children in your later years can significantly impact your happiness and health more than you might think. Additionally, how you shift your perspective on your circumstances can lead to positive improvements in your quality of life. You will be pleasantly surprised by the intriguing revelations we have prepared for you. Before we dive into the main content, let's listen to the story of a woman. This will be crucial in helping you grasp the valuable lessons that this video brings. So sit back, relax, and join us as we uncover the wonderful insights ahead. Ms. Green, a 70-year-old widow, decided to move in with her daughter Sarah after losing her husband. The thought of being close to her grandchildren and supporting her family filled her heart with joy. Who wouldn't want to be surrounded by loved ones in the twilight of their life? The prospect of a warm and happy family life seemed like a dream come true. Ms. Green felt as if she had won the lottery, with days filled with the laughter of children, the aroma of meals wafting from the kitchen, and the comforting feeling of being useful. "This is the life I have always dreamed of," she thought to herself while preparing breakfast for her grandchildren. Sarah's home became a paradise for intergenerational living. Mornings flowed with the scent of toast and creative, imaginative storytelling. In the afternoons, Ms. Green enjoyed helping her grandchildren with their homework, just like the days when she was a teacher. "Grandma, can you help me with math?" young Jack asked, and her heart melted with happiness. A recent study from Stanford University indicated that intergenerational living can enhance happiness and a sense of purpose in older adults, and Ms. Green was fully immersed in this experience. She felt younger than ever, as if she had discovered a fountain of youth in the radiant smiles of her grandchildren. However, as the saying goes, sometimes things that seem too good to be true really are. And this is when our story takes an unexpected turn. One afternoon, while Ms. Green was preparing dinner, she overheard Sarah talking on the phone. "Mom is such a blessing. I don't know what we would do without her." At that moment, pride swelled in her heart, but it was also mixed with a hint of unexplained anxiety. The philosopher Epicurus once said, "It is not how much we have, but how much we enjoy that makes happiness." Ms. Green began to feel as though every minute of her day was being occupied. Quiet moments to read a good book or simply gaze out at the scenery became scarce. Time passed, weeks turned into months, and life gradually settled into a repetitive pattern. Breakfast, homework, lunch, more homework, and finally dinner. Ms. Green began to reminisce about her old apartment, about the freedom to decide how to spend her time. But then she chastised herself. "How could I be so ungrateful? I have everything I ever wished for." One Sunday morning, while preparing Mickey Mouse-shaped pancakes, because honestly, who doesn't do that at least once in their life, Ms. Green suddenly realized that she couldn't remember the last time she slept in or went out with friends without worrying about dinner. Psychologist Erik Erikson emphasized the importance of maintaining autonomy in old age. However, Ms. Green started to feel that her autonomy was gradually being lost in the blend of family love and unspoken obligations. One night, after putting her grandchildren to bed, she sat alone on the porch, gazing at the starry sky, and couldn't help but wonder, is this truly the life I want for the rest of my days? That question lingered in the stillness, like a balloon adrift in the vast night sky. Poet Robert Frost once wrote, "Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the road less traveled by." Ms. Green questioned whether she had made the right choice or if, in her efforts to become the perfect grandmother, she had inadvertently lost herself along her own path. Her daily routine began to change in ways she barely recognized. Visits to her grandchildren, which were initially occasional to help out, had now become an indispensable responsibility. Suddenly, she found herself changing diapers, preparing bottles, and chasing after tiny whirlwinds of energy. Sound familiar? You're not alone. As Epictetus said, "Time is a river, and life is its current." And indeed, Ms. Green gradually felt the truth of these words. In the past, she had countless social activities and time for herself, but now every minute was claimed by the needs of her grandchildren. The strangest part was that Ms. Green didn't complain about this. Like many grandmothers, she felt it was her sacred duty to support her family. However, the fatigue gradually accumulated, bringing with it a sense of loss that she couldn't quite articulate. It was at this moment that the infamous housewife-slave syndrome emerged. No, this isn't the title of a new Netflix movie, though it certainly could be. This term was coined by Dr. Antonio Guajardo to describe the emotional and physical burden that housewives bear when assuming caregiving roles without compensation. Imagine being on an emotional roller coaster. On one hand, you love your grandchildren fiercely and cherish every moment spent with them. On the other hand, you feel your life slipping through your fingers as you find yourself changing diapers yet again. It's like hugging a cactus, beautiful but also painful. Research has shown that this syndrome can have devastating effects on the mental health of grandmothers. Lack of recognition, physical exhaustion, and loss of personal freedom can lead to depression and anxiety. It feels like you're running an endless marathon, but there's no one waiting for you with a medal at the finish line. Ms. Green began to notice these symptoms. She felt increasingly tired, but kept telling herself that this was normal, that it was part of being a grandmother. But is it really normal to sacrifice your health for others? The answer is no. Psychologist Carol Gilligan spoke about the ethics of care and how women, in particular, often tend to prioritize the needs of others over their own. Ms. Green was living this theory, sacrificing her time, energy, and even her happiness without realizing it. As time passed, Ms. Green often sat by the window, yearning for the freedom she once had. She reminisced about the days when she could leisurely enjoy coffee with friends without having to ask for permission or worry about schedules. Now those outings seem like an unattainable luxury. Ironically, didn't it? Ms. Green moved closer to her children in hopes of finding connection and intimacy, but now she felt lonelier than ever. The writer Paul Theroux once said, "Loneliness begins at home." Perhaps he was right after all. Ms. Green's story took an unexpected turn. What began as a beautiful dream of family reunion had now become a silent trap that she failed to recognize. Have you ever wondered how a decision made out of love could lead down a path we never imagined? Sarah, Ms. Green's daughter, began to reveal her true nature. One day, while Ms. Green was preparing lunch, Sarah walked into the kitchen with a displeased expression. "Mom, how many times have I reminded you that the kids don't like onions? Why do you keep putting onions in everything?" Sarah's criticism hit Ms. Green like a bucket of cold water. This was not an isolated incident. Gradually, Sarah's suggestions morphed into undeniable commands, while Ms. Green's advice was dismissed as unwarranted criticism. She felt her personal space shrinking and her voice slowly fading into silence. Have you ever experienced this familiar feeling? Perhaps you have gone through a similar situation or know someone who has. Renowned psychologist Erik Erikson, with his theory of psychosocial development, warned of the importance of maintaining autonomy in old age. According to him, losing independence can lead to identity crises and feelings of despair. Ironically, in our quest for support from loved ones, we can inadvertently lose the most precious thing of all, ourselves. Ms. Green gradually felt the weight of this harsh reality. Her former days, filled with projects and dreams, were now reduced to tasks of caring for her grandchildren and adhering to others' directives. The woman who once dreamed of traveling and learning new skills was slowly disappearing under the burden of others' expectations. A study from the University of Michigan found that older adults who maintain independence tend to have higher life satisfaction. Isn't that surprising? If we reflect on our feelings when someone controls every aspect of our lives, we'll see Ms. Green's frustration growing. Each statement of "you should do this" or "why don't you do it my way" felt like a tiny shard piercing her self-esteem. Annoyance and unwelcome guest began to invade the space that once offered her refuge. One evening, after an especially difficult day, Ms. Green quietly cried alone in her room. The walls that once protected her now seemed to constrict, making her feel trapped, with no escape, like an old item of little value that no one appreciated but dared not discard. How many elderly people live this tragedy, unknown to anyone? The irony is cruel. Ms. Green sought warmth from her family but inadvertently lost her own flame. What should have been a source of healing became an invisible cage. How could she escape this trap? Is there a way to regain independence without sacrificing family love? Philosopher Bertrand Russell once stated that the purpose of life is to grow, not only physically, but also mentally and spiritually. But how could Ms. Green grow when each passing day made her feel smaller in her own home? Prepare to explore how a longtime friend completely transformed Ms. Green's life with a piece of advice that challenges everything we typically think about aging and family. It was a day like any other when Jessica, Ms. Green's childhood best friend, decided to pay her an unexpected visit. With a bright smile and a bag of freshly baked cookies, Jessica rang the doorbell, bringing with her hopes of beautiful moments and the camaraderie they once shared. But what awaited Ms. Green behind the door left her stunned. "Oh, Ms. Green, is that you? You look so different," Jessica exclaimed upon seeing the dark circles under her friend's eyes and her tired expression. Ms. Green tried to mask her exhaustion, inviting Jessica inside with a forced smile. As they sat down at the dining table to enjoy a steaming cup of coffee, Jessica couldn't help but notice the unusual mess in what had always been Ms. Green's tidy and organized home. "Ms. Green, is everything okay? You seem exhausted?" Jessica asked, her face filled with sadness and concern. That was the moment everything seemed to burst forth. Like a river overflowing its banks, Ms. Green began to share all her fatigue, frustration, and the feeling of being trapped in a life that she no longer recognized as her own. "Jessica, sometimes I feel like I've lost myself. I'm no longer the woman named Green. I'm simply a grandmother," Ms. Green confided, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I love my grandchildren, but where did the woman who dreamed of traveling and reading all night go?" Jessica listened with understanding and empathy, nodding gently. As Ms. Green finished her story, Jessica took her hand, offering a warm smile, and said, "Dear Ms. Green, what if I told you that I went through something similar and found a solution that changed my life?" Ms. Green's eyes widened in surprise. "You? But I always see you happy and free." Jessica burst into a big laugh, her eyes sparkling. "Well, it wasn't always like that. Do you remember when my children convinced me to move in with them? After 6 months, I realized it was one of the biggest mistakes of my life." And from there, Jessica began to recount her experience of how she had also lost her independence like Ms. Green. Jessica continued, "One day, I remembered the words of philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson. The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be. And I decided to return to myself once again." Ms. Green listened with rapt attention, each of Jessica's words illuminating the dark corners of her soul. "That decision was not easy," Jessica admitted. "At first, my children couldn't understand, but you know what? Over time, our relationship improved significantly. Now they no longer see me as a burden or a babysitter, but as a mother, a happy, independent woman." However, Ms. Green interjected, "Jessica, don't you feel lonely?" Jessica smiled confidently. "Of course, sometimes I feel that way too. But as psychologist Carl Jung once said, loneliness does not come from having no one around, but from not being able to share important things with yourself. Trust me, ever since I regained my independence, conversations with my grandchildren have become much more meaningful and profound." Jessica's words shone like a brilliant light, illuminating the shadows in Ms. Green's heart. It felt like someone had opened a door leading to a path she had never known. "True happiness," Jessica continued, "comes from living life on your own terms, maintaining a healthy balance between family responsibilities and self-care. Did you know that recent studies show older adults who maintain independence tend to have much better mental and physical health?" Ms. Green shook her head, feeling as though she were being swept up in the fresh information that Jessica had just shared. Exactly. A recent study published in the Journal of Gerontology showed that older adults living independently often report higher life satisfaction, lower rates of depression, and even stronger immune systems, Jessica affirmed, her eyes filled with conviction. Ms. Green was silent for a moment, her mind suddenly filled with complex thoughts about everything she had just heard. Finally, with a voice trembling between fear and excitement, she asked, "But Jessica, where should I start? I'm really worried about hurting my daughter and grandchildren." Jessica took her hand with warmth and care. "Dear Ms. Green, true love is not possessive. Your children will love you more when they see you happy being yourself. Start with small steps. Return to the art class you once dreamed of joining, or simply take a walk alone each morning. Bit by bit, you will restore your own space." With a cup of coffee now cold in her hand and her heart filled with new hope, Ms. Green faced a challenge she had never dared to think about: reassessing her current situation and cherishing the independence she could reclaim. Jessica's unexpected visit brought not only delicious cookies, but also sowed the seeds for a new and promising life. Ms. Green stood at a crossroads. On one hand, she loved her family with all her heart. On the other, she felt as if she was gradually losing herself. She suddenly remembered the words of philosopher Seneca: "Life is long if you know how to use it," and she couldn't help but wonder whether she was truly living or just merely existing. One morning, while preparing breakfast for her grandchildren, she had a surprising epiphany. She recalled her long-forgotten passion for painting. When was the last time she picked up a paintbrush? She couldn't remember. That very day, she decided to take a small step toward her independence. She started with a simple act: taking a walk alone in the park. At first, she felt guilty for not being home to help, but before long, she discovered that hour each day brought her a refreshing sense of freedom. The solitude during those walks became an oasis in the desert of life. During her strolls, Ms. Green began to reflect on her forgotten dreams and planned to restore them. Her next step was bolder. She signed up for a painting class for seniors at the Solario Center. "Oh, I wonder if I still remember how to paint," she told herself. But as the great artist Pablo Picasso once said, "Inspiration exists, but it has to find you working." And indeed, inspiration found her. In the class, Ms. Green not only rediscovered her passion for art, but also connected with new friends. Amidst the brushstrokes and hearty laughter, she realized that she had been living in automatic mode, forgetting that life at any age is filled with possibilities. A study from Harvard University showed that maintaining independence in old age not only improves mental health, but can also extend lifespan by up to 5 years. Ms. Green was living proof of this. Each new activity, each decision she made for herself, made her feel younger and more vibrant. However, things were not always smooth. Occasionally, feelings of guilt would invade her mind. "Am I being selfish?" she wondered. Then she recalled the wise advice of her friend Anna. "You cannot serve from an empty cup. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. It is necessary for you to continue caring for others." As Ms. Green gradually regained her independence, she felt the wonderful changes in her life. Her energy seemed to be revitalized, her chronic pain significantly reduced, and her memory became sharper. As the renowned neurologist Dr. Oliver Sacks once said, "The brain is the most amazing organ. It adapts, changes, and regenerates through each new experience." Truly, Ms. Green was recreating both her mind and her life through each new journey she dared to explore. However, the most profound change was in her relationships with her family. Ironically, although she spent less time with them, the moments they shared became more precious and meaningful than ever. She was no longer the tired grandmother who always complained. Instead, she became a vibrant woman with engaging stories to tell her grandchildren and children. Finally, Ms. Green had mustered enough courage to have an important conversation with her daughter, Sarah. She realized that this would not be easy, but she also understood that it was necessary. As poet Maya Angelou once said, "There is no greater pain than bearing an untold story inside you." And Ms. Green realized she had so much to share. Her heart raced. She took a deep breath and sat across from Sarah. "My dear, we need to talk," she began, her voice trembling slightly. Sarah looked at her with curious eyes, unaware of what was about to unfold. "I've been thinking a lot lately," Ms. Green continued, "and I think it's time for me to live separately." The silence following her words was heavier than the atmosphere around them. Sarah blinked rapidly, seemingly trying to process the information just revealed. "But Mom," Sarah stammered, "why is that? Aren't you comfortable here? What have we done wrong?" Her voice carried worry, along with a hint of guilt. Ms. Green gently smiled, her eyes filled with love. "No, my dear, you are wonderful. but I need to find my own space. She recalled a saying by philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre: "Man is condemned to be free," and at the age of 70, she was deciding to embrace the freedom she rightfully deserved. Sarah's reaction shifted from surprise to confusion, and gradually into a mixture of sadness and understanding. "But Mom, will you be okay living alone? What if you get sick?" she asked anxiously, her eyes full of concern. Ms. Green clasped her daughter's hand tightly. "You see, Sarah, I don't mean to say that I will disappear. I just want to have a space of my own to grow and enjoy the remaining years of my life." She remembered a study from the University of Michigan, which showed that older adults who maintain their independence often have higher life satisfaction. "What about the grandchildren?" Sarah tried to find one last reason to hold on to. Ms. Green smiled and said, "I also cherish the moments with them, but you know, I believe I will be a better grandmother if I can take some time for myself," Ms. Green shared with a tone full of determination. Her words reminded one of the writer Anne Morrow Lindbergh. "The greatest joy of life is to be loved, but to be loved freely, voluntarily." Sarah was silent for a moment, reflecting on everything her mother had just said. Finally, with tears streaming down her cheeks, she nodded in agreement. "You're right, Mom. It's just that we will miss you very much." "And I will miss you all so much," Ms. Green gently replied, hugging her daughter tightly. "But just imagine, I'll be cooking delicious meals when you come to visit, without anyone complaining that I put in too much salt." Both of them laughed, dispelling the tense atmosphere that had enveloped the space. Family psychologist Dora Maria Elena Rodriguez emphasized that conversations like this, while somewhat difficult, are extremely important for maintaining a healthy relationship between parents and adult children. She affirmed, "Open and honest communication can strengthen family relationships, even when the conversation addresses major changes." As the conversation continued, Sarah began to see things from her mother's perspective. "Perhaps we all need a little personal space," she reflected, "and Mom has spent so many years taking care of us." Ms. Green nodded, her heart full of gratitude for her daughter's understanding. "That's right, and now I want to take time to care for myself. As the poet Rumi once said, 'Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself.'" Sarah smiled, her face a blend of pride and longing evident in her eyes. "Then Mom, perhaps we'll have to help you find the perfect apartment, one with a kitchen big enough for all your secret recipes and a balcony for you to grow some plants," she added. Ms. Green's face lit up as she envisioned the beautiful prospect of her new life. As psychologist Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." And Ms. Green had chosen a brave path for herself. Decorating her new home became an unexpected therapy, helping her rediscover herself. Every item she placed in the apartment carried a message of self-affirmation. The colorful rug she had always loved, which her daughter thought was too flashy. The paintings of her favorite artists now adorned her walls. She even dared to paint one wall of vibrant turquoise. "Oh, if only Ramon were still alive. I wonder what he would think," she chuckled lightly as she remembered her late husband. However, Ms. Green's true rebirth began when she decided to step out of her comfort zone. She enrolled in a gardening class at the community center. Plants and old ladies, what a boring combination, she thought to herself. There, she met Marie, a widowed woman with a sharp sense of humor, who quickly became her companion on new adventures. Together, they discovered the concept of active aging, which is not just about keeping oneself busy, but living with purpose and meaning. As the World Health Organization has pointed out, active aging helps people achieve their physical, social, and mental potential throughout their lives. Ms. Green and Marie decided to join a yoga class. Their first class turned into a humorous memory. "I feel like a bent cookie," Ms. Green joked, but they persevered, and before long they noticed improvements in their flexibility and balance. More importantly, they laughed more than they had in many years. One day, while they were sitting and enjoying coffee after class, Marie suddenly said, "Rosa, have you noticed that we no longer complain about our aches?" Indeed, they had been too busy living to remember to age. As Roman philosopher Seneca once said, "Life is like a play. It is not about how long it is, but how well it is performed." Ms. Green was determined to make the second chapter of her life the best chapter. She dared to do more, joining a book club where she discovered a love for poetry. She even dared to write her own verses, something she hadn't done since her youth. After experiencing moments of enlightenment and making the brave decision to reclaim her independence, Ms. Green faced a new challenge: how to maintain a close relationship with her family without sacrificing the freedom she had just regained. The answer, like many great truths in life, was simple but not easy. It was to seek balance. Ms. Green realized that the key to achieving harmony in life lies in healthy interdependence. This is a concept that renowned psychologist Stephen Covey described as a combination of independence and support from others. In practice, this meant Ms. Green set clear yet flexible boundaries. She decided to take care of her grandchildren 2 afternoons a week, while also reserving the remaining time to pursue activities she loved. Like a juggler, she often joked, but instead of balls, I'm balancing love, freedom, and responsibility. This new approach created an unexpectedly positive change in the quality of time she spent with her family. No longer were there long hours filled with repetitive routines. Now there were precious moments filled with laughter and genuine connection. As writer Mitch Albom once said, "Death ends a life, but it never ends a relationship." Ms. Green understood that strengthening relationships relies not only on the quantity of time, but also on the quality of those moments. However, this path was not always rosy. There were days when feelings of guilt descended like a dark cloud, obscuring the sunlight. In such moments, she remembered the words of psychologist Carl Jung: "What you deny controls you. What you accept transforms you." Instead of denying her emotions, she chose to accept them and use them as an opportunity to reaffirm her decision. A study from the University of Michigan showed that older adults who maintain a balance between independence and family support are able to reduce depression by up to 30%. Ms. Green was a living testament to this statistic. The new balance not only brought her happiness, but also improved her health. Over time, she became a guru in the support group for older adults that she joined. With humor and wisdom, she often shared, "Dear friends, aging is like fine wine. It needs space to breathe, but also the warmth of good friends to develop its full flavor." Her story inspired many to reconsider their own family relationships. As anthropologist Margaret Mead once said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." In her small world, Ms. Green made a change, one family at a time. But perhaps the greatest change occurred within her own soul. She no longer viewed herself as a burden or a decorative figure in her family's life. Now she was a woman with goals, dreams, and the energy to pursue them. And Ms. Green was determined not to waste another second. Her story proves that an act of self-love can change not just one person's life, but an entire family's. When Ms. Green decided to reclaim her independence, she did so not only for herself, but also sowed the seeds of wisdom for the whole family. As Carl Jung said, the greatest impact we can have on our children is not to teach them, but to live our own lives fully. And Ms. Green excelled at that. Her courage created a ripple effect. Jessica, her daughter, who had initially been hesitant, began to look at her mother with fresh eyes. She was no longer just a grandmother, but a woman with her own dreams and passions. This inspired Jessica to reevaluate her own life and question whether she was living the way she wanted. As for Ms. Green's grandchildren, they now had a vibrant grandmother with fascinating stories to share. Their eyes sparkled as Ms. Green showed them her new paintings or recounted her adventures in art class. Unintentionally, they were learning a valuable lesson about the value of independence and the importance of never stopping personal growth. However, the legacy Ms. Green left behind extended far beyond her immediate family. Her story is a call for all of us to reflect on our own family relationships. Are we respecting the personal space of our loved ones, or are we inadvertently suffocating them? Khalil Gibran once said, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself." Ms. Green understood that this also applies to parents. We are not our children's property, but individuals entitled to live our own lives. So, dear friends, I invite you to ask yourself, are you living your own life? or are you living up to someone else's expectations? Remember, it's never too late to start over. If you want an adventure, take it. And don't forget to invite me along. Life is too short to live in fear. Step out of your comfort zone and do things that excite you, for that is how we grow and learn. As the great writer Goethe said, whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Share this video with your loved ones so they can start applying these valuable lessons today. Consider supporting the channel by becoming a member. In doing so, you not only contribute financially, but also receive special benefits. I will pin the link in the comments for your reference. Thank you for your support. Now click on the next video to continue nurturing your mind with insightful lessons. Sending you a big hug and see you next time.